Well, welcome back to the Azure Podcast. This is episode number 426, being recorded on the 6th of June, 2022, with special guest Audrey Long. I'm Sujit, and on Teams with me, we have Kale, and of course, our special guest Audrey, who we're going to get to in just a minute. But before that, let's just cover a few updates from the past week. I know we had Bill just a week before, Kale, so not a whole lot of updates, but they still managed to squeeze in a few of them. And this past week, I noticed you put a few. You want to get started with us?
Yeah, sure. These aren't product specific, the ones I'll give you. So, like a lot of the product specific stuff, platform updates and things like that, as Sajid mentioned, was at build. But these are a little bit more a higher level. So the first one I had was around your skilling in Azure, and what I mean by that is how to kind of ramp up your knowledge of Azure technologies and services and things like that. Obviously, the podcast is a great place to get started for that stuff. But and that's what we try to kind of get across to our listeners. But there's something else that was introduced here called an Azure Skills Navigator that you can go to. We'll put the link in the show notes, and this basically kind of walks through different kind of roles and knowledges and skills around different areas. Like if you're a developer versus like an architect or something like that. So basically, it's kind of a portal to help you kind of guide whatever different role that you kind of want to play in using Azure. As I mentioned, like there's a bunch more than just architects and developers, obviously data engineers and data scientists and administrators and all kinds of things. So good link out here to this and some stuff on GitHub around that. This new site that we kind of launched to help you folks. And then the second one was around SQL Server. This was from the CVP of the database services talking about managed instances for mission critical workloads, and kind of talks through about like different things, comparing them, talking about the Azure virtual machines on AWS even. So it talks through all those different pieces around our data platform. And even some of our partners, I think I mentioned H&R Block in here around mission critical, SQL Server data workloads. The goal is here, right, to bring some light to, you know, as things are changing in the world and prices change, digital transformations are happening in companies, making sure you're aware of fully managed database services like SQL Server.
Yeah, with all the NoSQL talk going on these days, it's easy to forget that SQL Server is still the king or the queen, whatever you want to call that. So I'm going to just switch to a few of my updates. Three of them. Two of them actually were related to new VMs. One is storage optimized VM for in Azure now. I think they're the LS series, and this is essentially if you want to run something like a SQL server in Azure where you need storage, low latency, high throughput. If you're running, let's say, your own homegrown MongoDB NoSQL database where you still need that high throughput. So there's the new LS series. And another new series is for artificial intelligence applications. So if you do have AI style apps where you need a lot of GPU power, there's the new NCA 100 series of VMs that are available in a few regions right now. And they have the NVIDIA A100 80 GB Tensor Core CPUs, GPUs, I should say, and all of the high throughput for the storage as well. So definitely take a look at those two if you have those kind of use cases. And finally, I think we may have missed this last week, but the Microsoft Container Registry has now been renamed to the Microsoft Artifact Registry. And you can go there to look at all the container images that Microsoft puts out there. And they automatically come from the ones that are from Docker Hub, automatically come through from Docker Hub there. So there's one place where if you want to find out what the official images are for any Microsoft products, you can go to the Microsoft Artifact Registry website.
Hang on a second there, Sajid, on that one. You just said something about they automatically come through from the Docker Hub. So if there's something published on the Docker Hub repo today, you're saying it will automatically, transparently just show up in this new thing, or?
The Microsoft artifacts published on Docker Hub. So, Docker Hub has the Microsoft official container images as well. So you don't have to go to two places. You can just go to the Microsoft Artifact Registry and look for them, and it'll pull the ones that Microsoft, the MCR hosts, right? MCR is its own registry kind of thing. And then the ones that come from Docker. So this is supposed to be moving more to like a hub model where there's a single place where you can get all your artifacts from. I'm assuming in the future they'll expand that to other repositories as well.
Okay, thanks.
Cool, sounds good. Well, that's all the updates I have. Let's turn the mic over to our special guest, Audrey. Audrey, thank you so much for joining us today. It's Audrey and I have been working on an engagement with a customer, and I was very impressed with her background in security when it comes to Azure. And she had some nice topics she wanted to discuss with us relates to Defender on Azure. Which is not something that we would think of right away, right? Using something like Defender on Azure. So, but anyway, I don't want to steal her thunder on that. Audrey, please go ahead and explain. Tell our audience what your background is, and your passion for in Azure, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and thank you so much for the opportunity on being on your amazing podcast. So yeah, just to give you guys a little bit of background, I'm Audrey. I'm a senior security software engineer at CSE. I work specifically in a security solution area. And what that means is I sit in with lots of dev crews and lots of engagements and customers, and I'll help write code with them, or help assess security architectures, or go through any kind of security problem sets that are super difficult for customers trying to introduce their new services onto Azure. So that's what I do at my job. I actually just graduated actually a few weeks ago with my master's degree in cybersecurity from Johns Hopkins. So, really happy that that's over. Thank you. And tomorrow I actually have a presentation for a paper that I'm publishing for that security effort too. So, lots of really great things are happening right now. Security is also a big passion of mine. As an undergrad, I was a computer science major, and fell in love when I had to do co-ops and internships in the security field. And that's when I decided, like, yes, I'm going to be a software engineer, but I really love and have a passion for all things security. So that's why I'm here, and I'm so happy to be here. And yes, you're right. So today we're going to talk about Microsoft Defender for Cloud. And this is like a new kind of concept. However, it has old bearings within Azure. And what I was trying to hope to do with this conversation was demystify it a little bit. Because before, we had a few separations of these Azure services, and now they kind of are clumping them all under one umbrella. And it makes it a little confusing, probably a little bit ambiguous. Like, I know some people out there are probably thinking, like, what actually is Defender for Cloud, and what offerings does it have? And, I would also like to tie back in this talk about how I use Defender for Cloud with some of the customer engagements that I work with, and, some of the insights and potential new features to be on the lookout for. So
I'm glad you brought that up, Audrey. So give us a little bit of history. You mentioned that the Defender for Cloud has been some sort of evolution as such in terms of security on Azure on the cloud. So what are some of the things that we may have seen in the past, and explain to us how they're changing when it comes to Defender?
Yeah, absolutely. So for example, there used to be like the advanced security protection that you could actually turn on within Azure, and then you could see things such like as a secure score, and then all the security recommendations, and that was in the security center. Sorry if I misspoke, in Azure. But now they try to group not only the offerings from Azure, but the offerings from Microsoft 365 as well, like for endpoint. And now you have the new Azure Defender for IoT, which is its own kind of separate stack that's also being grouped under this Azure umbrella. So just to kind of make things clear, what I'm going to be going over today is going to be more in the Azure Defender for Cloud side of the house. And I'll kind of go over that in the different sorts of breakdowns on what that actually means, because it's actually not just one service. It's actually many different branchings and offerings of services in one location now, one centralized location in Azure.
Yeah, that was going to be my question, because my limited exposure to Defender so far I was like, okay, do I just turn this thing on and then I'm good? Or is it like I turn this thing on and then I have to turn a bunch of other things on? So maybe if you could talk through what's that look like, because there's definitely a way to turn Defender on for cloud, but then I was like, is that it? Like, or what else do I have to do to get benefit from this?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll break all of that down. So let me just kind of jump into it. And so first, I would like to say that Microsoft really has a passion for making sure that all of its users, all of its services are secure. They follow three major principles. I'm sure everyone's heard of it. It's like a big buzzword right now. It's called the zero trust principles. And Microsoft really does, you know, value these principles. And if you're not sure what zero trust is, I'm not going to go super into it, but I will give you the three that Microsoft uses. So the first zero trust principle is to verify explicitly, to always authenticate and authorize based on available data points, including the user identity, location, device health, service workload, data classification, and anomalies. The second principle goes over using least privilege access, which limits user access with just-in-time or just enough access, risk-based adaptive policies, and data protection to help secure both data and productivity. And then the last principle is assume breach, which minimizes the blast radius and segments access. So basically, it's to verify end-to-end encryption and use analytics to get visibility and drive threat detection and improve defenses. And with those zero trust principles in mind, you'll really start to see what Azure Defender really can offer to you, your customers, your solutions, in order to ensure that you have a safe environment. So let's jump into it. So Defender for Cloud. So I know you guys are probably wondering, like, what actually is it? So it's many things, but at a high level, it's a security posture and management cloud work protection platform. That's quite a mouthful. You can use it for Azure services. You can use it on-prem. You can also use it for multi-cloud resources. And a lot of those multi-cloud resources are still in the works. Some of those are getting ironed out, but you can use Defender for both AWS and Google Cloud Provider as well. So the three main things that Azure Defender for Cloud actually offers you is it continuously assesses your subscription. And what that means is it looks at your security posture for both in Defender for the Cloud Secure Score. And the Cloud Secure Score is a really interesting metric that you can actually look at to see the overall health of your subscription. And it does that by looking through everything that you have available to you in your subscription. It looks through your resource groups. It looks at all of the assets. It'll actually tell you based on what it does with its scanning to see if there are actually vulnerabilities, if there are any kind of misconfigurations. And it takes the subset of what you have in your subscription, and it actually calculates what's known as a secure score. So the higher the score, generally the more secure your assets are. And you have a question?
Yeah. So I mean, it sounds like you turned this on at the subscription level, right? I was thinking about, I'm going to spin up like a web app maybe, and I want to make sure that it's protected, right? Or I have a storage account and maybe that has to be protected. Is it so when we think about this, we don't think about it as a single resource that you're trying to protect? You're looking at it from the entire subscription, or does it go further than that as to the tenant as well? Like, I'm trying to see what the scope of the Defender may be.
Yeah, so it does actually go through the subscription for this portion of it, but actually later on, you'll see that Defender actually has many branches, and I can actually jump into that real fast for you. So let me just grab my list because there is a list. So this is what I'm going to go through. First of all, the three service offerings that Defender for Cloud actually has available to you when you turn it on in your subscription. Then Defender for Cloud also branches off into subsets. And the subsets are Defender for servers, Defender for storage, Defender for SQL, Defender for containers, Defender for app service, Defender for Key Vault, Defender for resource manager, Defender for DNS, Defender for open source relational databases, and finally, Defender for Azure Cosmos DB, which is in preview. I would also like to add a new one, Azure Defender for DevOps. which is also in private preview, which is really exciting. And, Sujit, I know we're working together and you'll hopefully get to see this one firsthand and how it actually is working out. So hopefully that gives a little bit more clarity on what Azure Defender for Cloud actually is. So it gives...
It does, but I want to try and make it a little bit more real for me.
Sure.
Let's say we're doing it at let's say the Key Vault level, right? That was one that I was not expecting actually. So let's talk about Key Vault. So what does it mean to have Defender for Key Vault? What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, sure. So I can jump right into that one. I was going to go a little bit into the overview of all of them, but let's start with that one. So if you enable Azure Defender for Key Vault, so it's an Azure native, advanced threat protection for Key Vault. And what that means is, there is a small fee associated with it, but it does actually have some really interesting anomaly detections that come with that enablement. So essentially, if you enable this feature in Key Vault, it will detect unusual behavior and potential harmful access to your Key Vault. So it does that, and once it actually detects any of these, like, hey, there's a lot of access that's happening from some random user, I don't know who this user is, but they keep trying to access the Key Vault, it'll actually send out email notifications to let you aware of that actually happening. But other than that kind of detection and like email notification, that's the first set of features that's actually available to you in Azure for Key Vault. Defender for Key Vault, but there are more features coming out. I can't get into the specifics of those features, but more to come. And is there another question?
Yeah, along with that, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, so if I am, just say, hey, just wait, I'll get to that.
Sure.
You mentioned like notifications, right? So
Yeah.
specifically, like Key Vault is very sensitive, right? Because there's keys or certificates or anything else held there.
Yep.
So getting an email that says, hey, there's this anomaly detected is one thing, but like, is there also like ways to configure it that it actually like proactively takes measures to help you as opposed to just notifying you, meaning like shut down stuff or not allow something to happen so that you're protected?
Right, that's a great and excellent question. For now, this is all that's offered for you in Defender for Key Vault. But like I said, the future holds many potential possibilities and better integration and probably even more like real-time mitigations. So I would definitely look forward to that in the future.
Cool.
Yes, another one.
Yeah, and I had a follow-up on that.
Sure.
So, when you explained about Key Vault, it was very interesting, and I understand now what Defender for Key Vault does. But I'm thinking back to when we had, I think it was Sarah Young a while ago. She talked about Sentinel, right? Azure Sentinel, as being that kind of, we're going to do some machine learning on all of your activity and the subscription or whatever, and figure out what's going on, right? I don't know, in my head, I can't seem to stop thinking that maybe this what you're describing is similar to that. Are they overlapping services or are they distinct when you talk of Defender and Sentinel?
Yeah, so I think that they would probably be distinct. Generally, with all of these scanning kind of capabilities that come with all these services, we can't utilize a lot of the same rule sets throughout every service, only because you really want to cater your scanning suite to whatever service that you're involved with, just to make it more robust and ensure that any kind of actual detection is not like just a false positive. We're trying to really extract and generate the true positives to make sure that you are safe against adversaries at Microsoft. And that's exactly what the Key Vault team is doing as well with Defender for Key Vault. And there's also new interesting features coming out in regards to like key rotation too, so that's another thing to look forward to.
Yeah, go ahead and discuss it. You were going to tell us some of the others Defender options or services.
Yeah, absolutely. So just going quickly back to the secure score, that's kind of one of the things that you get for free too with Azure Defender is you get the secure score. And it's really interesting because the secure score also comes with something called secure recommendations. And the recommendations most of the time will actually tell you right then and there, oh, you have this VNet misconfigured, or hey, you forgot to enable like MFA for this. Here's how you can do it. And some of the features even have like quick fix, like one-click button features where you can actually go in and enable them, which is really nice. And I can say too, like working in CSE and like getting to be on all these different engagements, I'm honestly surprised to not see so many people using this because it's just a really easy thing to add. It's really easy to see, and just like even just going through and just doing the one click on those recommendations, or maybe even having that customer discussion or a discussion with your team, like, why don't we want MFA enabled actually? Is that something that we're considering in the future, or maybe there's just not enough time on this project? Maybe we can throw it in the backlog. Maybe it hasn't even been considered yet. So that's what I really, oh yeah, go on.
One question on that secure score, like,
Sure.
should I think about that as like, is it like, oh, 100 is best, so we're always trying to get to that? Or is it more like relative, like, hey, you get the score, and then you like compare it as you're doing things, and if you see your score go up and down, then you know something's going on. How should I think about that score? Like,
Yeah, so as you know, like 100 is a perfect score. We're never gonna, like, if you do 100 perfect score, like your security team's gonna really like that.
you have
But
no
we all know,
service. It's shut
Yeah,
down,
yeah.
right? Like, that's
You're like
why.
you're like the Pentagon or something. Like, it's completely closed and nobody
Right.
can get.
Yeah.
Yeah, but in general too, like that's just almost never going to be the case. Let's be honest. Like just really looking through those lists, and then seeing, it gets recalculated based on like what's actually in your subscription. And there is going to be a feature coming out in the future where you can do it on like resource group levels as well. So it can be eventually more contained, but for now, the subscription base is where we're at. And it really does just kind of give you that insight, and hopefully like gives you more of a security mindset when you think about building applications in the future. Because let's be honest, as developers, we have a lot to do. Sometimes like just working on the feature and the user story that you're working on is hard enough, and then picking up the next one and you're back to square one on like, okay, how do I do this? How do I get this to work? How do I get it to completion, and then we're put in PR, and then I have all these comments. So sometimes we don't think about security in regards to development, and in regards to we're finished with this now, what do we do next, in regards to handing it off. And sometimes when we hand it off, the security team will stop you right there and be like, whoa, you didn't actually do X, Y, and Z, so this can't get into production. And these are real things that I've personally witnessed. And that's actually what I'm trying to do with all these engagements and with all of my work here, is to try to make sure that we actually have a good relationship and we understand what actually needs to be done, so we can see some of these projects going into production right away. And you have a question?
Yeah, so is it also, and maybe we'll get to this, but like something where like it sounded like when you introduced this that like Microsoft has a lot of intelligence around this kind of stuff, like, hey, you probably shouldn't be doing this, or you should think about why you're doing this. But what about if the company has specific policies, right, and says, hey, this thing's not inherently like dangerous, but it is to my company, right? So in
Right.
general, it might not be. Is that something they can put in there too, like custom rules or policies or
Absolutely.
something? Yeah.
Yes, you can absolutely add custom rule sets and custom policies. And actually a lot of the recommendations and a lot of the secure score is actually calculated based on the Microsoft threat intelligence landscape that we have here, which is really great because there's tons and tons of amazing security researchers at Microsoft that literally do nothing but understand the threat landscape of the Azure services, do lots of research on attacks that are happening, and then, using those attacks against the services that we have in Azure to make sure that we have, all of the newest and latest scanning mechanisms in these like Azure Defender services too. So, the threat intelligence is absolutely something that we take for granted here at Microsoft. And you're right, other companies do have their own policies, and you do have the option to attach like your own policies and whatnot, especially with the rule sets. Depending on which service you use, for example, like Sentinel, you can absolutely inject your own rule sets in Sentinel to find against, like, this is like a company X specific thing that we see all the time. We want to make sure it only stays with company X, but we want to, find it using Sentinel. So those are absolutely offerings. In regards to the Defender suite, I'm not entirely sure which services off the top of my head you can actually add your own custom rule sets to, because I personally have never had to explore that. But I'm sure that there are custom rule sets out there. And I can tell you now too, like the Defender team is really receptive to feedback. So me personally, I work with them very closely. I give them, customer feedback, and I give them my own feedback in regards to how some things can be better. And we can talk about that in some of the other features sets when we go down that line. But yeah, just know that they're hear you. So if you write some kind of recommendation or feedback, it doesn't just go into the ether. It actually goes into a conversation. And then if it's really impactful, it goes into a backlog.
And does this, the other follow-up question I had to that was around, and maybe this is like service specific for a Defender thing, but like I think we had some folks on here talking about Purview in the past. So things like data governance, where it's not really, that's more of an M365 thing, I would say, like not just Azure. Does it work with that too? Like it can like respect things coming out of Purview, or?
Yeah, so sorry, I don't actually have, I haven't used Purview yet.
Okay.
So I don't have the insight on that. I actually just heard about it during Microsoft Build for the first time. So it's like, oh, cool, that's definitely something to check out. And for me personally, you know, like with the engagements that I'm on, sometimes I can only like really investigate the ones that are like immediate to working on that at Microsoft. But yes, Purview has definitely been on my list, and it's one of those really interesting and easy to work looking tools for, you know, your governance and your structure, posture, and security.
So I know you're going to cover some of the other ones, but I'm most keen on hearing about IoT, Defender for IoT. So I'm wondering if you could cover that first.
Yeah, sure. Let me go ahead and get to those notes real fast. Sorry. Yeah, so Microsoft Defender for IoT it's really interesting. This space is actually something that I'm really passionate about because before my time at Microsoft, I actually used to be an embedded security engineer. So, you know, just kind of seeing what Azure is doing with the embedded space and the you know, the machine factory floor people is really cool. So Defender for IoT really does hone in on protecting IoT, OT, and industrial control system environments. Now, if those are new concepts for you, I can tell you that it's pretty far down a stack. So in general, if you have your classical stack, you know, you have a layer that, you know, reaches out to the network, and then that network reaches out to the cloud, and then the cloud will do all your Azure computing for you, and it'll come back down, you know, to whatever like agent that you have installed at the top of that layer. And then that perhaps can like bubble up or bubble down depending on what information you want to do with that. So in regards to what OT actually is, it's a little bit further down the stack, and it sits between the layer of, you know, IT and the firewalls and actually the devices themselves. So the fact that Azure IoT for Defender is actually really considering like how far down can we actually go on premises to you know, configure and give any kind of insights up to the cloud for you to, you know, store in the database, like have like some kind of like real-time data on your processes and your, you know, IoT devices. It's super interesting. So let me go a little bit more into that too. So Defender for IoT, you know, it actually delivers an agentless security solution for continuously monitoring all of those operational technology devices in industrial and critical infrastructure networks. So by incorporating, you know, this like IoT, OT awareness, what it does is actually take behavioral analytics from Microsoft's actually very recent acquisition of this company called CyberX that actually really specializes in a lot of these like low-level security insights. And, you know, it's available for on-premise deployments, and it also has lots of interesting options, such as it uses, you know, those agentless network monitoring to safely gain complete inventory of all IoT and OT assets. So that's really interesting too. Like just getting that inventory that's a challenge.
So Audrey, Audrey, you said
Yeah.
OT is what? IoT and OT. What does OT stand for?
Yeah, so OT stands for operational technology, and okay. That really is like in manufacturing kind of lingo, your layer between like a lot of your manufacturing floor devices. So honestly speaking, there's not too much of a difference between IT and OT. It's just a little bit more semantical. But yes, sorry, should have clarified that a little bit before jumping into it. I like this space a lot. I think
so. So in the IoT scenario, you have, you know, I have these Raspberry Pi devices, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. Simplistic. Mm-hmm. So you have those, and let's say on the factory floor connected to some machinery, and then you may have an edge device right on top of that, right? An IoT edge device. and then that would eventually connect it, say, to something like IoT Hub, right? I don't know what the new name is in Azure. I think they changed that name recently, but that's kind of the various places. So are we saying that with this agentless approach, we don't really need like a process running on the actual IoT, like on the Raspberry Pi or on the hub? It can somehow figure this out without having a local agent. Is that how you explained it?
Yes, and so that's also like a really interesting concept of like what actually agentless is. So agentless in computing, you know, it refers to operations where no service, like a daemon or a process, like for example, an agent needs to run in the background on the machine that the action is being performed on. So in reality, like all computer tasks require related programs to run, and these programs like could generally be considered, you know, agents. But in this scenario, that's not needed for IoT, Defender for IoT. Instead, you just can, you know, get that configured, and it actually does not interfere with any kind of processing, which is also really important too, because as we know, like at that layer, any kind of processing is expensive in regards to performance. So just having that awareness with like Azure IoT for Defender is really interesting too. And just so you're aware too, to kind of get more into, you know, what the deployment options kind of offer, it uses passive and agentless network monitoring to safely gain a complete inventory of the OT assets with zero impact to the performance, which, you know, reiterating that because that's really important. It identifies risks such as missing patches, open ports, unauthorized applications, and unauthorized subnet connections. So even at that layer, we can get that type of information using Azure IoT for Defender is really important because, you know, sometimes we don't even think about things like that when we're deep into a network stack like that. Like, because generally we just look at the firewall that goes out into the open internet, and that's generally what we care about. But, you know, these devices are really smart now. Like a Raspberry Pi, for example, like it basically has like a really powerful operating system for such a small device. And we don't think about like securing that and ensuring that like some, you know, patches or ports or unauthorized applications are actually on this device. Instead, we just kind of, and it's hard, let's be honest. So just ensuring that it's even connected and that it's working and we're even getting information from it is sufficient. That's how we think about it. But at the end of the day, like, nope, these things are really smart. Like your refrigerator, for example, like it's pretty smart if you get one of those smart refrigerators and you start to wonder, like, do I need my refrigerator to actually be this smart? You know, those are questions that I think about every day. So
Right.
I don't think I do.
I can say Defender for Fridge is coming soon now. Yeah.
Absolutely. Defender for Fridges coming soon to you.
So the the other one that caught my eye was the Defender for servers. I think, is that what you how you described it when you were going through it originally?
Defender for servers? Yes, absolutely. So let me actually go back to my Defender for servers notes. Sorry.
I'm sorry if I'm jumping around, but I want
No,
to make
you're
most
fine.
use of your time.
Yeah. So Defender for servers, I can touch this briefly, but I have interest in talking about Defender for storage as well, because there is a really interesting new feature that's coming out for that that I'd like to touch base on. But yeah, let's talk about Defender for servers. So, you know, as you actually alluded to at the beginning of this talk, Defenders for servers is really important. And servers, SQL servers, you know, any kind of server is being used still today. You know, we don't see that falling out of fashion anytime soon. And Microsoft Defender for servers uses threat detection and advanced defenses for, you know, Windows, Linux machine, and both in hybrid cloud environments, also like AWS and Google Cloud Provider, as well as it can be utilized on premise. And, you know, there's a few different plans that you can actually activate for, you know, Defender for servers. And depending on which plan that you activate, gives you a wide suite of scanning solutions and scanning options. So just to kind of quickly jump into the benefits for that, there's vulnerability assessment tools that you can actually utilize on the Defender for servers that you can use to scan, you know, your disk, your or just like any kind of file integrity, which is really interesting because they have like multiple different rule sets that they put on Defender for servers that look at, you know, that intrusion detection that could happen on files and throughout the network. So that's really interesting. It also, provides like just-in-time VM access. So you can lock down any kind of VM access and inbound traffic into, any of these servers. Like I said about the file integrity monitoring, there's also network hardening options that Defender for Servers offers. There's actually even Docker host hardening, which is like, that's an interesting kind of new feature that Defender for Servers also offers. And a lot of this information, like I said, gets generated from the Microsoft Threat Intelligence community, as well as the Center for Internet Security. So that's where
when it comes to agent or
from.
agentless, what is the approach here for Defender for Servers?
So this one, depending on if you do it on-prem or in the cloud, I do believe there is an agent solution if you do it on-prem.
Okay. Got
yes.
It.
So now quickly, I know we're coming to time, but I wanted to.
Yeah, talk about the storage one that you wanted to share something on that. We'd love to hear that.
Yeah, so, Azure Defender for Storage, this is an Azure native layer of security. It detects, unusual activity on storage accounts by utilizing also the Microsoft Threat Intelligence framework. And, what it does is it's really cool. It gathers indicators from a breadth and depth of sources to help you understand the threat landscape and help detect and prioritize any kind of attacks with a given context into potential vulnerabilities within your storage accounts. So it actually continually analyzes the telemetry stream, and then it generates that's generated from Azure Blob or like Azure File Services, and because of that, it'll start to understand and give you like awareness of anything that's actually suspicious that's happening in a storage account. But something that I really did want to iterate on that's coming soon is an anti-malware solution that's actually coming for Azure storage, and it's something that I've been working on. It's really interesting. So basically, anytime any kind of a blob gets uploaded, it's going to actually look, through some of that metadata, and it can tell you quickly if there contains any type of malware. So that's a feature to really look for. I'm looking forward to. I've been giving feedback to the Defender team about this. It's been asked about for many of the engagements that I've been in. And to be honest with you, like it's a really interesting and robust solution that can quarantine any kind of like malicious looking malware files. And that's something that maybe some people don't think about is, oh, malware in the cloud. Yeah, that still happens, and that's still something we need to be vigilant about.
That's good. Hey, Kale, we have the podcast hosted on Azure Storage, so I think I'm going to turn that on. Turn on Defender for just make sure no one's trying to hack into our podcast storage account. That's cool. Now that's some really good insights into that. Anything else? Any of the other services that are something that you want to share before? I know we can provide a full list to our readers, to our listeners in the show notes. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we wrap up here, Audrey?
Yeah, all I wanted to share is that, Azure Defender for Cloud and lots of the Defender Defender solutions, they're always growing, and there's always more and more interesting features that are coming out for it. I would keep a lookout, if you wanted to join any kind of a mailing list, kind of get the feature set available to you. That's something I would recommend, because I could tell you I'm on a few of them, and I get so much info about all of these new things that are always coming out. So lots of great things in regards to Azure and security, especially with the Defender suite.
Cool. Yeah, I like how you said that as developers, right? We're all developers, and we often don't think about these things right at the back. It's nice to have almost like somebody looking over your shoulder and saying, "Hey, by the way, you're not doing this, you're not doing that." Keeping you honest as you're building a solution.
Absolutely. And security should be easy. It shouldn't be one of those hard things that we all dread. So the fact that Defender's making it easy for all of us is also like really a blessing.
Kale, anything else for Audrey?
No, this was great. Thanks for coming on and sharing this. It's helped a lot for me, so I'm sure it'll help our listeners too to understand how the heck do I turn this thing on, and what am I going to get out of it. So it was awesome. Thanks so much.
Hey, not a problem. And yeah, there's a lot of topics I didn't cover here, but there's definitely really great reading information out there, and I can pass that info to you guys as well.
Thank you very much, Audrey.
Yes, thank you so much.